plant is not doing photosynthesis, it's not making toxins to protect itself. So many insects can see light in this portion of the spectrum, in this fluorescence portion of the spectrum. And the thinking is they can see in that portion of the spectrum so they can pick out which plants are under stress and which aren't. And they can target the ones that are under stress. These two are the ones that are of direct interest to us in terms of photosynthesis. The first one, electron acceptor, this is the one that's done by chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A can lose its electrons to an electron acceptor. That's going to start the photosynthesis process. The resonance energy transfer is done by what are called the accessory pigments. And these accessory pigments are helping chlorophyll A by grabbing portions of the spectrum that chlorophyll A can't grab. So if we go back to our little chart here, chlorophyll A can grab this light, but chlorophyll B and the carotenoids can grab this light. So if they can absorb this light and then transfer the energy, not the electrons, but the energy to chlorophyll A, then chlorophyll A could do more of this kind of photosynthesis process. So both of these types of pigments are important. The accessories funnel energy to chlorophyll A, and chlorophyll A is what starts the photosynthesis process. Okay, now, like a lot of things in biology, photosynthesis is a mess. It's a mess to teach, it's a mess to understand. It hasn't gotten any easier from when I was your age taking botany, 1988, I think I took a botany class. So what people have tried to do over the years is come up with cutesy ways of teaching it. That's an attempt to help students by making the material easier to understand. Whether it works that way or not, I'll leave that up to you. But this diagram here was one of these attempts. So back in the 80s, satellites were a big thing. You could get satellite TV, that was a new thing. Cable wasn't available in a lot of places. I don't think we had cable television until like 1983 or 1984. It just wasn't available in our neighborhood. And a lot of people had these satellite dishes, and they were huge, right? At that time, they would be like the size of like a quarter of my house in terms of area covered. And the way satellite dishes work is there's a little parabola here, and then there would be a little receiver here. And light in the form of electromagnetic radiation would be given off by these satellites, but it was in that portion of the spectrum of those kind of broadcast bands, right? So we're not talking about gamma rays or X-rays, but kind of the way your cell phone works, right? That kind of electromagnetic radiation. So that radiation would hit the satellite dish, and then no matter where it hits, it gets bounced toward the receiver. That's the way parabolas work, is they focus that electromagnetic radiation onto this receiver. So it increases the signal that these satellites would get from, the satellite dishes would get from these satellites. Okay? Nowadays, these receivers are really small. Like I've seen the satellite dishes for TVs, and they're like that big. But they still function the same way, right? They concentrate energy onto that receiver. So here is a satellite dish in a plant. So this satellite dish we're going to call a couple different names. One is an antennal complex, and this language, because it looks like the antenna right off a satellite dish. The other terminology that's used is they're called photosystem. Okay. And this photosystem, otherwise known as an antennal complex, is basically a grouping of all these photosynthetic pigments. There are carotenoids, chlorophyll Bs, and chlorophyll A pigments. But it works like a satellite dish. We're going to have two chlorophyll A molecules here that are the receivers. And these are located in what's called the reaction center. So here are my two chlorophyll A molecules in the reaction center. All around are these accessory pigments. So these accessory pigments are all over like this. They're functioning to funnel energy to chlorophyll A, and they do that through resonance energy transfer. So the light from the sun hits one of these photosynthetic pigments, and resonance energy transfer passes the energy between those until we get to chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A then boosts its electrons, which are promptly lost to an electron acceptor. Okay? So in these groupings of pigments that we see in plants, you find all of these photosynthetic pigments together. They're not randomly distributed around the leaf. They're concentrated together in these clumps of pigments called reaction centers or photosystems. And it looks like I'm losing battery power, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a day here. I'll see you next time.